Hello everyone, Stryker here, and today we're going to be reacting to more Dungeon Dad. I watched the adamantite dragon video, and he asked if we could watch, if you haven't watched this video, to please do so. If you haven't watched his adamantite dragon video, please go watch his video. It was very good, very interesting.
What do you think the most stolen object in all of D&D history is?
No idea.
Surely it would be something notoriously powerful, such as the hand or eye of Vecna. Or perhaps it's a treasure so valuable, kings would send entire legions of warriors to die just for a chance to hold it in their hands. Or maybe, just maybe, it's part of the dungeon itself. Greetings and welcome to Legend Lore, the show where I,
Legend
your humble
Lore,
host, share with you some of the most bizarre, fascinating, and truly hilarious tales from around the worlds of D&D. It's my sincere hope you will find these stories inspiring or, at the very least, entertaining. And today's story checks all of our potential subject boxes. It is a perfect example of player shenanigans leading to DM retaliation and ultimately sweeping consequences that would forever change one of D&D's most notorious dungeons. So sit back, relax, and allow me to spin you a yarn about the most stolen object in the entire history of Dungeons and Dragons.
The most frequently stolen object in D&D's history.
The Tomb of Horrors is possibly the most well-known dungeon in D&D's history. It was originally created by Gary Gygax out of pure unadulterated spite, which is a very strong motivator. He was constantly hearing stories about players who had brought their character to max level and had all this insanely powerful magic equipment, boasting they could crush any challenge put before them with ease. So Gary thought it was time to put that to the test. He created this dungeon to challenge veteran players in ways that went far beyond simply rolling dice and clever battle tactics. It would be designed with tons of logic puzzles and traps bordering on unfair, both in terms of trigger and consequence. This dungeon sucks so bad. Now, obviously that's a matter of taste, but there's some stuff in this dungeon that goes so far beyond challenging, I don't even really have words for it. If you're a dungeon master who fears you might be too hard on your players sometimes, I encourage you to read through it. In fact, have your players read through it, and they'll think you're a saint. Now, the actual contents of this dungeon, barring a few minor points, are fairly inconsequential to the story we're telling today, so don't worry, I'm not going to be spoiling too much. Why you would ever want to play this dungeon, I don't know, but I'm not going to be the one who ruins it for you. Your dungeon master will do that by following the text in the book. But all of that aside, it is indeed our central location for today. See, when Gary first created this dungeon back in 1975, he did so in order to bring it to the very first Origins game convention. It was meant to be a sort of ultimate challenge you could play at the con, so even if you died horribly, it didn't matter too much because it was just a one-shot. This dungeon has since seen a re-release in literally every incarnation of D&D since then,
Annihilation.
most recently in 5th edition as part of the Tales from the Yawning Portal adventure compilation. But harkening back to the official AD&D release of the dungeon in 1978, the first puzzle of this ultimate test was finding the damn location of the place. And I don't mean like playing through the story and following up on leads and clues to figure out which hex on the large hex map the dungeon's located in. See, when you get where you're going, at the location of this alleged dungeon, all you're gonna find is a flat-topped hill that's about 60 feet high. There are a bunch of rocks on top of the hill that, when viewed from the air, form the shape of a human skull, which honestly goes extremely hard. Although, the artwork in the original module is a little silly, but that's not what we're talking about today. I'm gonna try to keep this concise, but basically what you need to do in order to actually find the entrance of the dungeon is poke and prod around this giant hill with a 10-foot pole or a spear until eventually it goes through and you find a cavernous entrance. But there's actually 3 entrances to the dungeon, and 2 of which are dead ends, which also contain traps that can outright kill you if you're unlucky. Already off to a great start here. But assuming you manage to actually find the place, you get inside and you survive the litany of nonsense standing between you and the end of this dungeon, there is one particular encounter that I don't think even Gary thought would go the way that it often does. But before we dive into that, Have y'all heard about Discworld? Even if you haven't read a single Discworld novel,
No.
you've probably heard the name, and it probably evokes this image. Oh god, let's have that get in there. Sorry. This image of the proverbial Discworld in question. Well, whether you've had the pleasure of engaging with what is truly one of the most insane fantasy worlds to exist or not, you're gonna get another chance real soon because Discworld is getting its own TTRPG, and they're sponsoring one of my videos so that I can tell you all about it. This
Nice.
video. The one you're watching right now.
This one?
Obviously. The Discworld
Oh.
TTRPG brings the fantastic madness of Terry Pratchett's novels to a new medium, one where you can make puns and find the absolute limits of stretching the English language, not just on a page, but with your friends in our collective imagination. The Discworld RPG is a bespoke
That's a
system
big dragon.
specifically crafted to facilitate adventures in Ankh-Morpork, the city of 100,000 souls and 10 times as many people. Everything about the way this game and its mechanics are written just feels profoundly Discworldy to me. Is that a word? It is now. And honestly, I feel like it's something that is best experienced firsthand, so if this sounds at all interesting to you, I highly encourage you to check out the link in the description
Oh,
down
look at the
below.
dragon.
Go take a look at the Kickstarter for yourself, and you can even download the 47-page quick start guide, which will give you all the rules you need and even a
Dragon.
little adventure to get a taste of what the full game is going to be like. But whether you're a Discworld fan or you're wrong, I was seriously smiling the entire time I flipped through this thing, and I am very stoked to have some adventures in one of the most absolutely wild fantasy worlds ever penned. Thank you so much to Modifius and the Discworld TTRPG Kickstarter for bringing us here today to talk about some high fantasy theft. I feel like this was the perfect video for them to sponsor, actually, because what's about to happen in our own story today is so ludicrous. It's exactly the sort of thing that would fit into a Discworld novel. So let's get back to it, shall we? Towards the end of this dungeon, the players will find themselves standing in front of a massive metal door. The door does have a puzzle associated with it for getting past it, but that's not really relevant to our topic today, and I'm trying to avoid as many spoilers as possible here.
Gotcha.
The door itself, however, is 10 feet tall, 10 feet wide, and 1 foot thick. It's also made of adamantine. And you know what that means? It's math time, baby. Thanks to a seemingly innocuous room located in one of the dungeons detailed in Tomb of Annihilation, we know that a 10-pound ingot of iron is worth 1 gold piece and weighs 10 pounds. We also know that an adamantine ingot of the same size weighs 1 pound and is worth 10 gold pieces. That's really good information to have because we can now use that to determine how much this door in the Tomb of Horrors might weigh. Our 10-foot tall, 10-foot wide, 1 foot thick door here is going to be an area of about 100 cubic feet. 1 cubic foot of iron weighs approximately 491.49 pounds, which is a lot. That means our entire door, if it were made from iron, would weigh 49,149 pounds. But it's not made of iron. It's made of adamantine, which we know weighs only 10% of what iron does. So doing some easy maths, that means our door actually weighs about 4,914.9 pounds, and at a rate of 10 gold
How can you
pieces per
steal
pound of
that?
adamantine, that works out to a literal door in a dungeon that is worth 49,149
That's a lot of gold.
otherwise known as a shit ton. Anyone who's played D&D for long enough, or who's played that part of Baldur's Gate 3 literally once, knows how valuable adamantine is. So you better believe the second your DM starts describing this thing, the wheels are gonna start turning. Now the door itself is enchanted with a permanent aura of anti-magic, but you don't need to affect the door with magic to pry it off its hinges if you can just destroy the wall it's attached to. There's also a bit of ambiguity here about whether the door maintains its magical properties once it's been pried off the wall. I'm personally of the mind that taking the door off its hinges does not remove the magical properties associated with it, but it doesn't really matter either way because that door is worth so much money. And if the DM really decides it's necessary, there are ways of dealing with anti-magic. And I can promise you, you will never see a normal person turn into an engineer so fast as when there's a valuable heavy magic thing to be dragged out of a dungeon. This behavior was so common amongst players that stealing the adamantine door in the Tomb of Horrors literally became an inside joke within the D&D community, thus making this random door the most commonly stolen item in a dungeon of all time. Something in the game itself that supports this too is that in the 3rd edition Tomb of Horrors release, the door is no longer made of adamantine, it's made of steel, specifically citing the fact that it's too expensive for the demons to keep replacing the adamantine doors. And I think that's
That's funny.
So funny. It conjures images of a bunch of demons at an infernal Home
Dang
Depot
gummit, not
begrudgingly
again.
handing over treasure to pay for yet another adamantine slab to replace the door after the last group of adventurers pried it off the hinges. Fortunately though, in the 5th edition release of Tomb of Horrors, the adamantine door is back. So if you ever find yourself delving into this dungeon, clean the place out. I also think it's hilarious just knowing there are some groups out there who got to this door, pried it off, and just left. They didn't fight the final boss. They didn't loot the dungeon because they're rich now.
Yeah.
Why do they need that?
Yeah.
They don't care. It's also funny too because this dungeon was specifically created to lure adventurers in to kill them and steal their soul. I mean, that's getting into the deep lore of the dungeon a little bit, but
Sure.
it means that it is canon that groups of adventurers go to this place and most of them are killed, which means that it's not even just a meta experience we as players of the game are sharing. In
Sure.
the world of D&D, a bunch of people have gone and stolen this door. That is so funny to me. Like, what? But anyways, thank you so much for joining me on this somewhat short journey through D&D's
Yeah, that was
history
fun.
today. I think it is a perfect example of player shenanigans attaining their final form. Just the fact that there is acknowledgement of this behavior in an official D&D book so many years after the fact is very telling, and it's one of my favorite things. I also discovered a weird little tidbit about adamantine while doing research for this video. In the original dungeon, the door is said to be made out of adamantite, which is weird because the suffix "ite" is usually applied to minerals, not forged metals and alloys. And it never really registered to me before, but in a lot of older D&D products, you'll see the metal referred to as adamantine, but also adamantite, adamantium, and adamant, all of which basically just got rolled into one single term, adamantine, with the advent of 3rd edition. That's not super relevant to what we're talking about here today, but it's also not something I could conceivably make an entire other video about.
Sure.
And since we're kind of talking about adamantine today, I felt like sharing that little fact with you. So
Thank
take
you.
that bonus piece of information, log it into your brain bone, and
Logged
do
in.
with it what you will, which is probably nothing. Or think about it at 2 a.m. before you're falling asleep. Anyways, I could go on forever about obscure doors hidden within the depths of forgotten D&D lore. Which actually reminds me about this little tavern tucked away in the mountains that holds a secret shrine to a lost god. But that is a tale for another time. Thank you so much for watching. It means the most. I really appreciate you guys showing up for these videos. I wasn't
Thank you for
sure
making
how it
them.
would be received when I started making them, and your support for expanding my content into new areas has been resounding, and I am very grateful for that. If there's a story from D&D's past, whether we're talking in-game lore or out-of-game history about the game itself, let me know in the comments down below, and who knows, we might just talk about it on this show sometime. But once again, thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next one. How many adventurers do you think just kept the door and used it as the entrance to their house?
That would, well, actually, that would invite more people to steal from you, though, right? But that was fun. That again, this came from the adamantium dragon video. This is a lot of fun. I would be interested to see more of the history stuff. I like the monster series, but this is a really good segue into like his other stuff he does. But I'll put the link to the original video in the description below. Please give Dungeon Dad your support, subscribe, like this video, and if there's any other videos you want me to watch about D&D, monsters, or funny stuff like this, anything like that, feel free to put in a comment below, or you can join our Discord and you can tell me there. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and until next time, take care and have a good one. Bye-bye!